Chapter 10, 10A, Alira. The day seemed a whole lot brighter now that the family was coming back together. Paisley was in her room at the cove, gathering her things while I waited for Fenton to return from his chores. There were only a few more weeks left of school before summer break, and Cadence was already trying to walk. She was playfully toying with the flowers in the entryway as we waited. As I watched, Cadence would pull the petals off the dandelions popping up in the gravel. "Cadence, no," I admonished. "We don't hurt the flowers. We only pick what we use." She shoved her little fist at me, handing me the dandelion petals. Then she turned back to the flowers. I looked around impatiently as I counted the petals in my hand. He loves me not," I mumbled to myself. I was about halfway through the petals when I looked down and noticed the dandelions in full bloom again. I quickly turned, expecting to see Paisley beside me, but she was nowhere to be found. As I watched on, I witnessed Cadence restoring more and more flowers to their previous state. "Paisley!" I yelled. "Come quick!" She came scurrying from the inn, alarmed and perplexed. "What has happened?" Paisley asked, out of breath. "Watch Cadence," I said. Then I handed Cadence the petals. Cadence looked down at the petals with a little frown on her round face, then back up at me. "Go ahead. Do it again, Cadence," I urged her. Fenton came running, looking just as stunned, looking around to make sure everyone was okay before starting in. "What's wrong?" "Just wait," I cut him off and turned back to Cadence. She put the little petals on the ground and pressed her hands into the soil. No sooner had her hands touched the soil when 3 new dandelions started making their way out of the ground. "Whoa," Paisley and Fenton said in unison. "When did she learn that?" Paisley asked. "I don't know. This is the first I have witnessed it," I answered. "I didn't know she was a Terra Magus," Fenton supplied. I thought back to the night Mother died, recalling the words of the Mistress of the Night. "No, she is a prodigy," I responded. "Lady Tenebra called her that on the night of her birth." "Well, whatever she is, isn't she a little young to have powers? And do you think your brother has the same powers?" Fenton asked curiously. "Tenebra said they come in pairs. It is probable that Alistair also has powers." "Oh no," I gasped as I recalled more of the conversation. "Tenebra mentioned that someone would be coming after Cadence as well. What are we going to do?" "We need to get back as soon as possible and let Grandfather know," Paisley insisted. "You're right, Paisley," Marin said, who had followed Fenton out and was closely followed by Mrs. Norfolk. "However, there is no harm in finishing out the visit," she stated, seeing the disgruntled look on my face. I scooped Cadence up and handed her to Marin. Now that Fenton was here, I had no intentions of being anywhere else. I hadn't spoken to Paisley yet about Grandmother, wishing to surprise her about it, but wanting desperately to tell Fenton all I had learned from Grandfather. I pulled Fenton aside and regaled him on all the latest news. I wished I could stay there all day with him, just holding his hand. I could see Paisley outside with Marin and Cadence. She seemed so excited about another Magus in the family. I would tell her soon of my empath abilities, as Grandfather said. Fenton was very excited about my being an empath. "I just knew you had to be special. You've always got me figured out and calmed down when need be," he said. "I bet you're darn eager to talk to your Gran. She can probably teach you all about your abilities." I could always count on Fenton for great support. He was probably the only person who didn't look down on me for my illness. I guess I couldn't really call it an illness anymore, if Grandfather was correct, though. Paisley was eager to return home, while Fenton and I had other ideas. We sat perched on the fence, staring out at the road. We talked of a variety of things until the sun sank low in the sky. I knew with Paisley returning home that visits to the cove would be less frequent and less time for us to be together. It seemed his mind must have been on much the same as he stared down the road and sighed. "I made this for you," Fenton said, as he took my hand in his and slipped a delicate bracelet over it. The bracelet was a beautiful piece made of yellow jasper and wires. The stones were polished with a sheen, and each shone vibrantly in the sun. The yellow reminded me of Fenton's sun-worn hair. Jasper's supposed to help process emotions. I find it fitting, considering your gift. It's beautiful, I remarked. As I lifted it to the sun, Fenton leaned in and kissed me on the lips. It was so fast, I hadn't the time to think, but only to feel the warmth of his lips and the tingle of the release. I stared at him a moment, mouth still parted and stunned. He waited for my response, though there was nothing I could do but kiss him back. We rode back to the manor with a warm breeze at our backs. The night air was heavy on the lungs. Creatures of the night could be heard abuzz, and the trees creaking in the wind. The sun had sunken below the horizon, causing a beautiful red and purple sunset to end what was the most amazing of days. Paisley, however, did not seem happy in the least, her eyes throwing me daggers as I fingered the stones of my bracelet, smiling. I would have thought she would be happy for me, but I guess stealing her best friend was an outright affront towards her. I would speak to her later about it, but for now I would enjoy my bliss. As we neared the edge of the town, the nightlife ambience grew quiet and the rustling of the trees grew louder. All at once, a creature jumped out at us, causing an uproar among the horses. They stopped abruptly, causing the cart to swerve and bounce aggressively as we came halting to a stop. The creature stood about 6 or 7 feet tall, with long limbs, fur all over its body, and a long snout. It bared its fangs at us and growled deep in its throat. It walked toward the cart, hunched over slightly and drooling. Its arms nearly touched the ground as it walked, they were so long. We screamed as it drew closer, unsure of what to do, or even what it was. In an instant, Paisley's protective powers came to our aid. Tree limbs grew out around us, encircling the cart and forming a barrier between us and the creature. We sat huddled in the wagon, crying and screaming. Marin was curled around Cadence in a fierce protective grasp as Cadence wailed on. Claws raked the sides of the shield, causing more fear and anguish within. I sat huddled next to Paisley, my fear exploding within me. "What is it?" I heard Paisley ask quietly, though no answer came. I could hear the fear in her shaky voice reflecting my own. If Paisley could not keep us safe, we would surely be dead soon. And then I remembered what Grandfather had said about my empath powers. Trying as hard as I could, I pushed my fear aside and willed some courage into Paisley. A change came over Paisley, and I saw a face of terror go to a face of determination as she called her fire to her. A blazing whip of flames formed at her sides, and fire shot forth from her hands. A hole parted in the barrier as she stood and readied to face the beast. The horses whinnied in terror as the beast rounded on them instead. Paisley stood with renewed courage and made her way out of the cart as the barrier closed behind her. As nothing could be done from within the cart, I turned my efforts toward Marin and Cadence, willing all the courage and calmness I could muster into them. Soon the baby fell quiet as Marin sat, soothing her into a quick sleep. The noises outside the cart were those of crackling fire and striking blows. It was unclear what was happening until a horrible screeching was heard, followed by yelps of submission. Footsteps could be heard retreating from the wagon and back into the forest. Quiet blanketed the night until vines slowly started to disband from around us. Paisley returned, her hair fallen around her face and sweat dripping off her brow. Vines were slowly slinking off her, as she had apparently called them forth for added armor. "Is it truly gone?" I asked, staring around the woods. The words were barely out of my mouth when a wave of exhaustion hit, wiping me out entirely as I slumped to the floor of the cart and was out.